Star Wars Battlefront 2 2017 was one of the greatest wastes of potential in video game history.
This game is a Star Wars themed online casino.
Star Wars is a franchise loved by the world, but seemingly hated by its own creators. Now it is nothing more than a cynical cash grab, a global phenomenon reduced to a shamelessly malicious children's casino thanks to none other than Electronic Arts. They bungled one of the easiest wins in video game history. EA tried to launch Battlefront 2 with the most egregious, greedy, and straight up boring pay-to-win mechanics using a predatory loot box system to try and get kids addicted to gambling in a Star Wars game. And just like with the Empire, the people fought back.
Garbage! It's trash! Every fucking pool is trash!
Electronic Arts. Well. Looks like you fucked up, didn't ya?
We're instead talking about how fucking greedy and stupid EA is.
We didn't allow Joe Camel to encourage your kids to smoke cigarettes, and we shouldn't allow Star Wars to encourage your kids to gamble.
We shouldn't allow Star Wars to encourage our kids to gamble. We are at the point where video games are as predatory as the cigarette industry in marketing harmful habits to children just for the sake of quarterly profits. EA single-handedly brought legislative action against random mechanics in video game monetization with a Star Wars title. This franchise was a global hit, and they couldn't take the time to figure out how to launch either Battlefront title properly. The most obscene thing about these dumbass loot boxes is that the most obvious thing to monetize is sitting in front of all of us. Look at this. Look at all of these cosmetic options. I mean, there are hundreds of clones that didn't make it into the base game. Where is Episode 3 Commander Cody? Where is the Clone Wars Commander Rex variant? They could have sold these skins for $5 a pop and made a holy metric fuck ton of money. There's already a market for Darth Claws, but EA makes the team work on this shit instead? Like, do you know how many skin possibilities there are for the Clone Commando alone? You could sell the old game's characters as a set together for like $20, and no doubt people would pay for that. But instead, we are left with 3 measly skins. One of them is barely noticeable change over the first. They just added a few stripes. This extends to pretty much all of the heroes as well. There are 0 customization options for Vader, when battle damaged Vader from both The Force Unleashed and the Obi-Wan Kenobi show would have been incredible. All this to say, in the Star Wars universe, there is a plethora of monetization options that are purely cosmetic that would have made EA an absurd amount of money and also would have brought a significant amount of diversity to the visuals of the game. But what do? They monetize gameplay elements, making the game pay to win, even going as far as to make some of the star cards give up to 40% damage increases or 40% health increases. This makes the game super unapproachable to new players because they will be playing with significantly less damage output and health. When compared to opening a new Obi-Wan Kenobi or Luke Skywalker skin, opening cards that make stat numbers go up is the most boring process imaginable. By trying to monetize the core gameplay elements, Electronic Arts shows they forgot that games needed to be fun for people to pay money for them. Alright, now that the loot box rant is out of the way, let's talk about how the game actually feels to play. It's pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. This is, without a doubt, the most beautiful Star Wars experience in a video game to date. The team at DICE is clearly very passionate about the Star Wars universe, and I can see that in the meticulously crafted game assets. They are obviously huge fans just like we are. The lighting effects as lasers fly past you are breathtaking. The detail in each droid, clone, and hero brings them to life beautifully, and the maps are some of DICE's best work, which makes sense because this is a year after they made the Battlefield 1 maps. The scale of the massive maps, space stations, and star destroyers and similar ships, mixed with the variety of locations you can fight at, really shows the depth of this universe. The game is absolutely incredible at bringing out that childish sense of wonder, like I was visiting the universe for the first time. And of course, the classic John Williams tracks blasting over every game give them such an epic and grandiose feeling. Everything combines to make you feel like you are truly fighting for the fate of the galaxy in this arcade shooter experience. One of the best ways to experience this intergalactic conflict is in the multiplayer game type Supremacy, a late but much needed addition to the game. Supremacy truly captures the feeling of a massive, large-scale battle in the Star Wars universe where longer games mean teams trade boarding each other's ships, creating a grand sense of conflict. Both teams fight over the map below for control of 5 objectives. If your team takes them quickly enough, you get a chance to board the enemy ship and defeat the opposition at its source. The game can be extended if the defending team manages to wipe out all of the attackers, which will bring the battle back to the surface of the planet. I also had a lot of fun with Galactic Assault. This game type is much more restrictive and on rails, but it creates a ton of great Star Wars moments by giving us beautiful set pieces to play through with mammoth vehicles that would probably be pretty broken if left completely completely free and open to the players. Getting to see iconic locations like Endor and Hoth brought to life so vividly is wonderful. These maps are truly a marvel. A fantastic thing they accomplished with the multiplayer is letting us get our hands on as many different characters and abilities as possible. The clone commandos, Wookiees, droidicas, super battle droids, snow troopers, flame troopers, jetpack troopers, and so many more feel amazing and all have unique skill sets, creating endless options for fun. Running around as an Ewok is always very funny, and getting to gun down rebel scum as the Sith trooper makes you feel like a rampant fascist. But hey, what doesn't nowadays? Heroes vs. Villains was probably my favorite game type as a kid. Getting to spend hours jumping around as Darth Maul or Obi-Wan was my dream, and the fun here lives up to my nostalgia. Besides the hero combat being a little wonky, with lightsabers having very weird hit registers and a mechanic that forces you to auto-jump to a target the game has picked for you, this is some of the most beautifully crafted fights we could have asked for. The clash of glowing lightsabers mixed with the bursts of laser fire and explosions bring a cinematic awe to these epic duels between Star Wars legends. Luke crossing blades with Darth Vader, Yoda getting to face down Darth Sidious, and Obi-Wan and Anakin taking on Count Dooku together are just a few of the epic scenes you can recreate every day in this game. It is such a shame that they canceled live support on this game before we got all of the heroes that we truly deserve. Co-op turned out to be a wonderful surprise. It is genuinely a ton of fun. In this mode, you team up with 3 other random people to face waves of bots while you are either defending or taking an objective. It is pretty much Firefight from Halo mixed with Rush from Battlefield. They just throw huge waves of bots at you, which makes the pretty terrible enemy AI much less noticeable. Cover and positioning becomes significantly more important with the enemy numbers. Also, it just looks cinematic as fuck to see hundreds of clones and droids on the battlefield running around like absolute lunatics. I had such a blast playing with this mode, and I highly recommend it. The devs at least made the big brain decision to allow mod support on the platform, giving the community a chance to take part in creating more Star Wars content. And of course, the community completely dedicated itself to bringing us as many Star Wars characters as possible, from all different time periods, with packs including hundreds of different heroes. I think this proves my earlier points that EA could have sold all of these cosmetics and made an absurd killing. No doubt the game would still be hugely popular today, but instead we have the star card system and the game is almost dead, barely hanging on by a thread.
All hail the Dark Lord of kill streaks.
One of the most beautiful parts of this game is its space battles. DICE absolutely outdid themselves with the starfighter combat. The graphics are phenomenal here, every map bringing a different Star Wars battle to life vividly. The lighting, colors, assets, and grandiose scenarios breathe life into a stunning starfighter experience. Every second of the starfighter combat is gorgeous, but what makes the flying so fun is how responsive the spacecraft is to your input. They finely tuned the flying controls so well that it's effortless to pick up, and there is still a ton of room to master the flying and outskill your opponent. You can whip these ships around like crazy and still have total control, creating many opportunities for some incredible plays. Being able to fly these ships in first-person mode with the heads-up display off is one of the most immersive experiences in a Star Wars game to date. The cockpit of each ship is meticulously crafted to engulf the player in all of their details, making the first-person option a cinematic masterpiece. Sitting inside the cockpit of the N1 Naboo starfighter is just an absolute marvel. They took so much time to meticulously craft the dash of this super nostalgic ship. The starfighter assault maps are all unique with different objectives, creating many different opportunities for fun. Blowing up shields to trap an enemy star destroyer in space is an exhilarating scenario that these stunning maps can facilitate. There is nothing quite as unique and nostalgic as jumping into an X-Wing to defend a beautiful planet from the invading Empire. But here again, the ever-endearing star card system rears its ugly head. All of the unlockable content here is focused on stat-based effects, making progression feel pointless and facing veteran enemies frustrating because they just have higher base stats than you. When again, the most very obvious thing is sitting right in front of all of us: hero starfighters. The lack of different hero starfighters in this game is just criminal. I mean, they literally could have just changed the color slider for Yoda's Jedi starfighter to red and yellow, and we would have had Obi-Wan and Anakin starfighters as well. Again, just change the color slider on Boba Fett's Slave 1 and you have Jango Fett's Slave 1. All of the code for the controls, weapons, and maneuverability are all already there. They just need a few more assets, and they could have made a few more assets with ones they already have. have by changing colors around? Who is managing this? Having so few options when there are literally hundreds that EA could have charged for is so mind-bogglingly incompetent that it's hard for me to fathom. While the maps are incredible, there are barely any maps for this incredible game mode, and when you mix that with the fact that there are barely any hero starfighters at all, you get a game type with some of the best feeling, controls, and gameplay to date, but with the most bare bones amount of content possible, leaving the maps feeling heavily repeated and the game type very dead. What an absolute tragedy. The last section of this video is going to discuss the campaign, which I am mixed about. The writing in the campaign is terrible, unfortunately, but the missions are fun to play through. Let's talk about the main character, Iden Versio. I think if a Star Wars game is going to show the Empire side of the story, they should just commit to making the main character evil and having them die at the end. Seeing the Empire side of the story is interesting because we haven't seen that perspective before. Imperial scum are not sympathetic, so if you try and make the main character likable after they essentially murdered tens of thousands of rebels, you're going to have a bad time, which is exactly what they did with Iden Versio. Defeating the Empire from the rebels' perspective is something we have seen several times at this point. Let us watch the Empire collapse from the viewpoint of someone who is in it. How cool would it be for the final mission of a campaign, you get blown up in the Death Star 2? Getting to gun down a bunch of rebels has some shock value, I guess, but having the character take a complete 180 after gunning down so many people completely fell flat. In the first space mission alone, I took down like 10 or 12 of these Corvette cruisers, and yes, I did use Wikipedia to look up how many people it took to crew those things, and the answer is a minimum of 30 to a max of 165, so we killed anywhere from 300 rebels to 1,980 in just these Corvette class cruisers alone. The rebels are basically just civilians. These Corvette cruisers are literally civilian vessels repurposed to fight the Empire, and Iden just blows them up non-stop in the first two missions. After all of that, she just gets welcomed with open arms into the rebellion? You're telling me after killing thousands of rebels, Iden is just completely accepted by the rebellion without being charged with war crimes? There's not even an interrogation scene to get vital Empire intel from such a high-ranking Imperial officer. Like, you know, what they would do if they were strategizing for a war or something? Huh, what's that doing there? But I digress. The space battles carry this campaign. Like I said earlier, the starfighter combat is phenomenal, and the campaign gives you so many beautiful set pieces to play around in. The space missions truly do feel grandiose, and I wish more than anything that Star Wars Battlefront 3 was going to be a thing so that DICE could work on this space combat even more. Even though the space battles are my favorite, the campaign does have some impressive ground missions. The mission titled The Storm is top tier. The masterful visual storytelling as you walk through the Imperial planet is especially potent. The tower in the middle even looks like the Dark Tower from the Lord of the Rings with the mortar-like lightning surrounding it. Also, the mass incarceration by Imperial forces is chilling, but it is completely and totally unbelievable because these citizens are loyal to the Empire. Why would the Empire waste resources on imprisoning a planet of people that are already loyal to them? I mean, they built a Dark Tower in the middle of their city. It seems like they're pretty dedicated to the cause. Imperial citizens being the reason that Iden switches sides is absurd because of the number of civilians she guns down herself. The setup to this switch was unfortunately just horrible. Having this character about face so hard is just too jarring. In the previous missions, Iden was fine to slaughter a ton of random civilians because, you know, that's who makes up a rebellion, but the group of people on this one specific planet are enough to change your mind? Makes no sense and is super lazy. This level could have been iconic, maybe even one of the best levels in a Star Wars game ever if they had taken the time to get the perspective right, but unfortunately the execution was poor and getting here makes the character very unlikable. For some reason that I really can't put my finger on, watching Nazis kill other Nazis doesn't have the same emotional response as, say, Nazis killing innocent civilians. Somehow, the writers fumbled that one super hard. Also, this level with the giant space jelly whales was beautiful. Flying through this level is a staple Star Wars experience of wonder, excitement, and exploration. It goes to show just how much of an insane amount of potential this game had, and clearly how passionate DICE was about bringing us that experience. They were obviously just cut down and overshadowed by their dark overlords at EA. In my notes I have in parentheses, thunder cracks, or lightning strikes, and Sheev laughs. What should have been the last mission, the Battle of Jakku, was an incredible finale for the game, and they ruined it for some reason, but we'll get into that in a second. Making the Battle of Jakku a mission was a no-brainer for this game, and it worked out fantastically. This was the last battle of the rebellion against the Empire after the second Death Star was destroyed. You drive your X-Wing to different objectives, from blowing up some bombers to saving a group of soldiers on the ground, all the while massive Imperial and Rebel ships are colliding in battle above you, Star Destroyers raining from the sky. This This truly does feel like a conflict for the fate of the galaxy, with consequences so wide-reaching that the number of people affected is unimaginable. And then after this epic mission, they tack on this weird one where you play as Kylo Ren through someone else's memory, and then Kylo kills one of the main characters off, who the writers had literally just made Iden Versio's love interest in the scene before this. Like, why is this here? What does this do besides completely and totally unravel the supposed emotional journey of our two main characters? This journey was horribly written, but they did fall in love. Allegedly. So why kill this guy off and ruin your happy ending for this weird memory scene that didn't have to include this Spock-looking motherfucker in the first place? Makes no sense, the writing is horrible, just skip the cutscenes and blow up stormtroopers. In conclusion, this game truly squandered some of the greatest potential a video game has ever had. Everything was set up for EA to knock this one out of the park, and they dropped the ball so hard that governments got involved to regulate loot boxes, which paved the way for developers implementing battle passes into every game, which I also hate. But hey, at least it's not random gambling, I guess. Star Wars Battlefront 2 will never be able to escape that it is the game that broke the camel's back and forced legislation against loot box mechanics. It will never outlive the reputation of being the greediest, slimiest cash grab in video game history. A shadow will always cover up the incredible amount of work and passion that DICE put into the maps, character designs, and game types. On top of that, EA even canceled continual live support for the game right as it was building an audience again, which is another just mind-bogglingly stupid decision that I can't understand. But what if EA let DICE continue working on Battlefront 2? Who knows how high it could have flown? Well, at least the team went to work on Battlefield 2042, and that turned out great, right? For how tremendously awful this game was handled, I want to give it a low score. The taste in my mouth from how bad the launch was and how hard EA tried to exploit us and then tell us that it was a favor weighs so heavy on this game now that it will never escape that pressure. That being said, the spirit of my new series, After X Years, is to see how the game feels now after however many years after its launch. And Star Wars Battlefront 2 2017 plays very well. It's an absolute tragedy that overbearing monetization killed the game, but what is here is incredibly fun. Ignoring the tremendous failure of the game's launch, the gameplay is so enjoyable that I would easily give it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, I am obviously super biased because of how much I loved the universe growing up. The game still suffers from being anti-fun and cruel to new players because all of the veterans have up to 40% increased damage or 40% increased health, and the unlock progression is still completely and totally compromised by the star card system after 5 years. But even still, the gameplay and nostalgia truly shine bright, and I enjoyed my time playing this game very much. If you are watching this day of, then Happy New Year's Eve, and I hope that you had an incredible Christmas. Star Wars has always been synonymous with the holidays for me because I would always ask to get Star Wars toys as presents. I hope that 2023 is absolutely incredible for you. We recently hit 250 subscribers on the channel, which is a quarter of the way to monetization, and honestly, I am so thankful for all of you. 2023 will be the second year that I have tried to take YouTube seriously, so I can't wait to see what lies ahead. Being able to escape from everyday life here on YouTube has been a passion of mine for a while, so I really hope that I can create something entertaining for others.
That's a little brat right there. That's a little brat.
Oh, look at the good boy.
Look at the brat.
I can't thank you enough for being here. The fact that you would share some of your time watching my video truly means the world to me. If you did like my content, maybe consider leaving a like or subscribing. It greatly helps the channel out and literally always makes my day. Happy holidays to everyone, and remember, love yourself always. And hopefully, I will see you all in the next video.